So today we have a very interesting story to go through. What do you think is the worst thing that could happen when somebody has a Windows 11 update problem? What do you think?
That would be blue screen problem.
Yeah, the blue screen is pretty bad, right? I checked on ChatGPT. Nobody's computer had gone up in flames directly or explosions. That hasn't happened. But what I had happened to mine is much worse than this here. And I will tell you in detail what that was. So I have a pretty good laptop, a 17-inch screen with a GPU and memory and everything. And that was my primary workstation. But what I got was a really, really bad problem with the Windows 11 upgrade. So this was a compulsory Windows 11 upgrade, and then it required a reboot. But now it turned into a real problem. When I pressed the power button, that thing would turn on, but it would also go off immediately. Less than 1 second, and pop, the power button goes off, and of course the computer stays blank completely. So my laptop was super bricked, right? Some people have a brick. That means you can maybe put some power in, but nothing happens. So my thing was super bricked. And then I phoned up the Hewlett Packard people. The system was still under warranty. And so they had me try all sorts of things. Try this keyboard combination, try this power reset, try a different power supply, try to do the firmware reset. And then after quite a few hours, they finally admitted that machine was completely dead. And then finally, I got them to send me, with a few days delay, a huge box where the laptop fits in. And then I had to ship the entire computer to their shop in California somewhere. Now, whenever you send in your computer for repair, they never promise that you get your data back. And so what I did, I opened the computer up and I took out the memory chip. Basically, the hard disk of the computer is a so-called NVMe SSD drive. So I took that out and I bought the very same one as a second copy. And then I plugged that into a special adapter and I made an identical copy of the hard disk that was in the computer, and I deleted all the confidential information, let's say client information or whatever was critical, and I copied that to basically, and I copied the identical drive and removed everything that's some sort of private information. I removed all of that and then put the half empty but bootable disk right back into the laptop so that they couldn't say, well, you sent us a computer with that hard disk. No wonder that's not working. But it's typically safer. And also that way I keep holding on to the original hard disk, right? I could tell that that thing was still working, although the computer itself was completely dead. Now here was one critical move that I did before sending the computer in. I removed the disk that is inside the computer, the hard disk. The hard disk looks like this here. It's kind of a tiny memory chip kind of thing. It's the modern SSD drive. So I removed that from the computer, and then I bought the very same one, a second copy of that, and plugged that into a separate computer and made an identical copy. Then I deleted all my private information and company data of the computer so that we don't ship any confidential company data to Hewlett Packard, and then they either lose it or break it. And that was very, very important.
Smart.
So that was a good move. And the good thing here is with my Hewlett Packard computer, I could remove the memory, the SSD. And so that is very important. And then I sent the whole computer to Hewlett Packard. And unfortunately, it was under warranty. Took a 1 month delay. And then basically what they said, they replaced the entire motherboard. And they returned the laptop with my clone. So that was nice. Then I could see the computer that I got back was working perfectly again. Now, of course, nobody can not work for a whole month. And so what I typically do is I back up my entire computer onto hard disks. like here, I just use a so-called external hard disk toaster. It looks like a toaster, like this here, and you can plug in entire hard disks like so. These would be the cheap ones, like they're too big for laptops, but they're nice for backups. So you plug it into the device like this, and then you plug that into your laptop, and you can make an identical clone of the hard disk that is in your laptop to the external clone. So my favorite software for making these clones is the EaseUS Partition Master, a very easy and easy to use software. And in some cases, you may even be able to boot from the external drive. That would be the ultimate test that you have a perfect backup, because you can run it on your local hard disk that's built in your computer, and you can boot it from the external drive. That's a real high degree of confidence that you have an absolutely perfect backup. It took me a while to finally figure out what actually happened to the computer that it completely bricked, right? And so here is the technical explanation. There is something called the embedded controller. That is a teeny tiny computer that's inside the computer, and that kind of that controls how the computer starts up. Embedded controller. So it's a tiny chip, and it basically controls how the power button works, how the battery gets connected, keyboard, fans, and startup. So that thing needs to be running. And if that breaks, then the computer cannot start, which is exactly what I had. You press the power button, pop, absolutely nothing. And the amazing thing is, my Windows update actually caused that exact failure. Amazingly enough, this is very rare. It doesn't happen to everyone, but it can. And so most computers get through Windows 11 okay, but some fail catastrophically, which happened to me in February. So what did I learn from that? No laptop hardware is indestructible. Oh, for that, by the way, I want to bring up, I was using for a long time when I was getting really, really frustrated with computers, I was trying to buy actually indestructible laptops. This one here is from General Dynamics, the people that make tanks, and it's an absolutely fabulous laptop. I used that for many, many years, and it was actually absolutely indestructible. It's really fun to do that. And then I could buy them on eBay, so for a really good price. Normally they cost a small fortune. And so a really, really nice laptop. And you also can have a removable hard disk and a removable battery. So there's a removable hard disk just for that computer. And then it has the battery that can be taken out. And let's try that here. Not easy. Let's leave it in for now. But these things got old, and I wanted to get a new computer, and I thought, well, they are so cheap now that if I have to buy a new one, I can always buy a new used one. And so that's what happened. The Hewlett-Packard one, it failed after about 3 or 4 months, but it was really a software failure after all. It wasn't even a hardware failure. One way how, and here's some instructions on how you can avoid getting a bricked computer when you do the update. Make sure that you don't run your computer on battery. It needs to be plugged in. Don't do it during travel times, and don't do it where it's like too hot, right? Keep these things safe and stable for your computer so that it will finish the entire update, even if it takes half an hour or longer. So I was lucky that when the computer was totally bricked, it was still under factory warranty. And so sending it to Hewlett-Packard, getting it back, great, it's all covered. And I thought, well, let's buy an extended warranty, and that's from a third-party provider for that computer as well. And I was hoping that if I have a third-party warranty, that if we get a bricked computer from a Windows update, that would be covered. But check your warranty contracts. Typically, the non-Hewlett-Packard warranties don't cover bricked computers from Windows updates because they say, no, that's a software problem. That's not the hardware. but it's a software problem, not covered by the thing. So there is a way how you can harden your computer against future update disasters. And so the first thing one should probably do is certainly make a fresh clone. You remember that was copying the entire thing onto a separate hard disk, either like these types of things or the external hard disks by using the um, uh, partition commander software. Okay, great. So you make a fresh clone, and then here's what comes next. You disable the firmware updates because a Windows update can contain all of these different things. It can contain the BIOS updates, which is basic input-output system. How does your computer talk to the hardware that it has connected? It may contain some, I don't even know what this one is. It may contain the trusted platform module updates. That is some sort of encryption security thing. And then the EC related updates. We discussed those. And those are dangerous updates. And we always hope that Windows doesn't do them, but it could. Now, there's an interesting way how you can tell Windows to stop doing those updates. You can basically don't do these driver things with the updates. You basically say, do these commands here, Windows R, GP edit, computer configuration, and then you say, do not include drivers with Windows updates. That would have prevented that type of error from happening. Then, let's see. Here the same thing. There is a BIOS update that could come from Hewlett Packard or whatever company you have. And here we basically say, if we click on, we start up services, then select BIOS service, update service, and we say disabled. So that will stop the background firmware updating. And then, let's see, here we are saying that if you have your computer set to so-called fast startup, that could sometimes confuse the boot up process. So it's best to turn off the fast startup. Go to Control Panel, Power Options, uncheck, turn on fast startup. Oh, more choices still. We want to make sure that your computer doesn't go to sleep or hibernate during updates. That is actually in modern computers automatically the case. Make sure it's on an AC adapter. Then we are saying don't let Windows update our BIOS. So we have to go to the vendor page for your computer and try to do those BIOS updates manually. All right, this here is another crazy one. So gpedit.msc, and we are saying prevent the installation that match these types of devices. So that way you don't get Windows updating that stuff. And once you have that, you're basically fairly safe now. You have basically 99% of the catastrophic failures covered. Clone, 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 clone. Then you do your checks that these things are disabled, and then start up your, then do the update, and that should work fine. Here are some additional settings that you can do. Secure boot, good to turn it off. Intel Platform Trust technology may not be required if you can disable that. Same with the virtualization and standby stuff. That is also good. Here it recommends to set the fan to be always on, which basically means that if your system seems to get stuck, then at least initially it will have the fan running. Once Windows runs, then it can control the fan by power management. It's good to have your last laptop computer as a fallback hardware. That's what I needed when I needed to make the clone, because of course I couldn't clone my computer when it wasn't even turning on. So that way you have your your cloning platform, and you can plug your USB hard drive into that. Good. What else do we have? So you can basically document the versions that you have, and then basically before you make changes, record what you had, and then later you can look at what you have. Okay, and then talk. The interesting thing is, so my computer was covered under factory warranty, and those are not the same as extended warranties. So the factory warranty, let's say Hewlett Packard, they say, well, if our thing fails, we fix it. Good. The extended warranty, they basically say if a physical component fails due to the effect of wear, we may repair or replace it. And so notice that they don't cover firmware, BIOS, this crazy embedded controller, right? That's the troublemaker there. They don't really typically cover these things. Software triggered brick events are not considered hardware failures. So that's why it's so important to do the hardening of your computer against this stuff. So that was the day that completely bricked my computer, and they had to replace the entire motherboard. Pretty crazy adventure. So remember, I was lucky because I did not lose any data at all. Cloning my stuff, cloning it on hard disks, like so, or even just buying already a second copy of the same memory chip that is in your computer, make these backups. EaseUS Partition Manager is quite good software for that. No computer is indestructible, not even these ones, because when I had this, the computer never broke, but Windows often did. So it's good to be well prepared. You want to set up your system that you don't get failure. You cannot trust your computer, you cannot trust the data, but you can trust your backups. And ideally, when you have backups that you can even boot from. Okay, so we have made some notes that are in the explanation of the video, links. Check out the links, and see you again soon. Subscribe if you like.